Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on today's webinar. Today's webinar is a continuation of our last webinar, which was about 3 weeks ago, and today's webinar is titled A Guide Through Google Analytics, Analyzing Your Data. It's going to be presented by Anna Chandler of Go Local Interactive. And before we get started, I just have a couple of quick announcements on behalf of the LSA. And also, just because I always get this question, yes, you will receive a recording of this webinar tomorrow in your email. So, don't worry too much about taking notes. If you miss something, you will be receiving that recording. So with that said, next slide, please, Anna. So for those of you who aren't familiar with who the LSA is, which I'm pretty sure most of you know by now, but I'd just like to do this little introduction. LSA is the hosting organization of today's webinar. We usually host about one small business-focused webinar a month, so keep an eye on your email for future announcements about those. And LSA stands for Local Search Association, so we are a marketing and advertising trade association based in Michigan. And we're made up of traditional and digital advertising and marketing partners, many of whom work directly with local businesses like yourselves, such as Google, Facebook, Yelp, Bing, are all members of the LSA. The LSA is made up of more than 300 members in about 20 countries. So with that being said, again, yes, you will receive a recording of this webinar in your email tomorrow. And we really want you to be engaged in today's webinar. So if you have questions at any point in the webinar, feel free to post them in the questions box, which is on the lower right-hand side of your screen, and we'll be sure to answer those. With that, I'm going to pass things off to Anna to get started.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. On today's webinar for Analyzing Your Data, we're going to discuss some of the most important reports we can get out of Google Analytics for your business decisions. And just to orient ourselves here real quick, this is the data categories that Analytics provides. So there's customization, which lets you get easy access to key information like custom reports. A real-time, that lets us know what's happening on your site right now by volume, location, source, and most active pages. Audience tells us who our users are. That's by age, gender, geographic region, behavior, browser device, and interest. Acquisition tells us how we're getting our customers, and that's like by source, by paid campaign, social media. Behavior tells us what our users are doing on the website, including page performances, site speed, events. And then conversions lets us know how our users are becoming customers, like what website goals are achieved and how to attribute that success. And each of these data categories provides just a ton of reports, and the sheer amount of data can get pretty overwhelming. In fact, the question I hear most often from small business owners is, where do I even start? So today we're going to focus on what I think are the most key areas to pay attention to based on how that information can really influence and transform your online marketing strategies. So of all those things today, we're going to focus on the key reports from the audience section to understand and capture your user base, acquisition to measure our campaign successes, behavior to review your website functionality, conversions to see the full customer journey, and then how to create and use analytics segments to overlay some data for some really key actionable decisions. So, it went backwards. So to start off with here on our audience reports. When we know our website audience, we can answer strategy questions like, are you reaching the audience that you expect to? And what audience spends the most time on the site? Who converts the most frequently? What revenue can you reach by targeting each group? And how are your campaigns affecting your reach? Because in today's world, people expect their online world to be really frictionless and customized. It's not enough for us to just cast a wide net and hope something gets picked up anymore. We have to target our reach and our message, which not only improves our customers' experience, but allows us to innovate and strategize about the budget we're spending. So there's a lot in the audience panel that one could look at, but let's focus on the most important reports for starter data strategy: demographics, location, and technology. So within demographics, and here's a screenshot of what the report looks like in analytics, we can see the behavior of users by gender and by age within those 6 brackets you see here. And in this report, we can see how we're doing now and how that's turned over time. And what we're looking here for is engagement. Who visits your site the most often, who stays longest, who converts the most frequently. With this insight, you can then focus only on high-performing groups or devote resources to bring in lower-performing groups that you want to see more of. In either approach, you now have the data of current customers so that you can adjust demographic targeting in like social media or paid ads, for example. And we use the same kind of engagement philosophy, who's coming to our site, for a location level performing. And you can look here by country, by region, and all the way down by city. This is also a great way to monitor offline success as well as what's happening online. It's not as definitive as tracking exact clicks, but let's say that you're targeting a specific city or region with like TV ads or mail or billboards. If you see a sudden lift in traffic from those cities, we can reasonably conclude some causation, which is one of the easiest ways to track offline targeting nowadays. This audience section also includes information on technology. It lets you know the behavior of users by browser and by mobile device. And here we can look at this report to find large underperformers. Say that Safari users visit a lot, but they rarely convert. Or maybe Android use is really low, even though mobile traffic overall is strong. This lets us unlock some likely technical difficulties that your web team can use to investigate and improve the site with. Because we don't want to just rely on, oh, overall traffic is strong. We want to make sure that every single one of our customers can enjoy the site. Good web developers out there do try and test your site across browsers and devices, but there are just a lot of those out there, and they change often. So this is a really important first line of defense. And then to talk about our most important areas of the acquisition reports. So those of us know where our customers are coming from, right? And we can use that to answer questions like, what source provides the most traffic? What source provides the most conversions or the best conversion rate? Based on this performance, do you want to increase or decrease budget in a specific marketing campaign? And then how balanced is that online portfolio? So AdWords is a big section of this acquisition panel, but since it really deserves its own webinar, I wanted to walk through the three most important reports from here: source, referral, and social. So the source medium report shows us driving our traffic over time and what users do after they get to the website. And as a quick refresher here, paid CPC traffic, those are the sources you get from paid sources like AdWords. Organic you get from search. Direct traffic is people knowing your domain name and typing that right in or having it bookmarked. And the referral traffic you get from links elsewhere on the internet, like a Facebook post or a reference in an online article. And if you haven't yet spent a ton of time in analytics, I think that this should be your very first investigation. A lot of times we feel like we need to invest in every possible form of online marketing just because we think we should. And there's definitely a huge advantage in experimenting and doing what our competitors aren't and being available in all of those online spaces. But there's also just not infinite budget available, right? And when we look at the sources of traffic that you're getting, you'll know, are you getting enough website visits from a source that you want? Like, for example, if you're spending a ton of time on Facebook, but you're not getting those clicks on your website, then maybe we need to review the strategy or even decrease some of the time expenditure we're spending there. And are you getting a lot of traffic from a specific campaign you want to put more effort into? If email marketing is really paying off not only in traffic but conversions, then that makes it really easy for us to say, yes, we definitely want to keep investing in this. And you'll also look at balance here. So have you put all of your eggs in one basket, so to speak? There's a recent article from The Guardian's Mary Hamilton where she pointed out if someone else's algorithm change could kill your traffic and or your business model, then you're already dead. We don't want to rely on third-party businesses, whether that's only Google or only Twitter, to keep the entire company going. So if, let's say your organic is 90% of your traffic, that's something we really want to keep an eye on and make sure we're getting traffic from lots of sources to sort of protect ourselves. And within that source report, you'll see traffic you're getting from referral and social, but let's dive into those specific reports too. So in referral, you can find all of the sites linking to you, including social media platforms. And that's important to note. This trips some people up. They each have their own reporting section in analytics. The traffic is only provided once. So if you see 50 sessions from Facebook and referral, and 50 in social, that's 50 sessions total, not 100. Google just kind of duplicates some of that reporting. And referral traffic is important to look at here because a lot of ranking power still relies on links. if you're getting a lot of traffic from those sources, those links are important to keep. Make sure they don't break or get deleted. And it might even be worth engaging in the community there. If you're lucky enough to get a link from a high-value website, like let's say a news source, we definitely want to see what influence that has on our traffic and our user base. On the other hand, if you log in here and see that you only have traffic from your own social media sources or say a job posting board, then there might be a need for some outreach, like PR. And the social report dives into those social sources specifically. So not only can you see how much traffic they're providing, you'll also get to what specific pages are sending traffic to, which is great for measuring campaigns. You'll see in here that social does have a conversion section, and you might be tempted to click on that first and see how often it pays off from a profitability perspective, and you should. That's worth checking on. But social media is extremely important for the awareness stage. It provides a lot more power there than direct purchasing. So I would say there it's really helpful to have a micro goal that you're actually measuring against. For example, maybe you want to see how many in-depth articles were read based on some Twitter posting, or you want to see how many social users signed up for a free demo. And then let's talk about the reports in the behavior section. So that lets us know how our website pages are performing. And that way we can review strategies like how many views did this page get, how many people bounce or exit from it, how long do they spend reading the content we've produced, how many people reach the website because of this page, and how quickly do our pages load. And these can be answered in the site content, landing pages, exit pages, and site speed reports. So the site content all pages section, these are the metrics that most people actually think of when we talk about analytics, like page views, time on page, bounce rate. And do be careful when you're looking at these numbers because the way Google measures them can be a little counterintuitive, like as we discussed in the Part 1 webinar. So you spend a lot of time and effort producing these pages, right? Not only the content on them, but the design, the programming. So we want to see how our customers are interacting with it. And as a starting point, if you first open this report, let's look at the number of page views over time. And for your evergreen static content, is it what you'd expect? Questions we might want to ask are, is there a specific product or a location page underperforming compared to similar pages? Do people enter on the page and then bounce all of the time? How much value is that specific page lending our goals for the page value? And this lays out a strategy for content improvement or other programs to drive additional traffic to that specific page. Maybe that's a paid search campaign, maybe that's just some improved SEO. And this same kind of philosophy we'll also use for the blog pages we'll see in this list. But by their nature, it's not going to be surprising if we see they have a higher bounce rate or less assisted conversions as your static content does. We can even really expect that. But by seeing how many page views they get and how many entrances, we'll be able to see the most popular topics, and that way you can plan some future content strategies around them. And this section does include information on entrances and exits, but I also want to show you those specific reports because they are so important. So landing pages, this section in the behavior area shows you what, other than your home page, is attracting users to the site. A lot of times we design websites with assuming that people are always going to see our home page first. But you'll see actually when you dive in that a lot of people never see the home page. They come in on another page through organic search and spend their entire time on the website through that channel. So we want to make sure we can understand all of the customer journeys and make sure that that user experience is well established no matter the entry point. Now conversely, the exit pages will tell us where people leave. And if that's not where you'd expect, like a thank you for an order completed pages, we want to know what kind of improvement should we make to keep people on our website. And one more section of the behavior area I wanted to talk about, there's a site speed report. Page speed is really, really important to user experience and to keyword rankings, especially mobile performance. So this is really important to look at. In fact, Google is going to switch to a mobile-only index very soon here in 2018. So it's important we start looking at this now and making sure we're providing the level of performance our users are expecting. The mobile-only index, if you haven't heard, means that previously Google would look at your site based on the desktop version. And they would use that to determine how, based basically good the site was and therefore how it should rank for people. But now mobile use has eclipsed desktop use, and so Google's realized that, and they want to make sure they're judging the site based on what most people see. So now they're going to come look at your mobile experience and use that to determine how good your site is and how well it should rank. Speed's only one part of that, of course, but it is a big part. And here in this section, you can look at the page load time. You get to look at those by browser, by page, and Google even offers some suggestions in here on how to improve that performance. And our conversion reports. So conversions tell us how many goals we're getting, right? That way we can track what kind of success and profit we're getting from the website. And here we can answer questions like how many macro revenue-oriented goals are we getting? How many micro lead nurturing goals are we getting? What marketing program is providing us the most goals? What's our conversion rate look like? And what pages lead customers to converting? So within this conversion section, we're going to look at the goal overview, reverse goal path, and top conversion path reports. So in the goal overview, here we're looking at how many goal completions we're getting, their value, and that goal conversion rate. This is one of the most important areas in analytics to check frequently, since this is bottom line data, and it's also an area where trending over time is really vital. That way we can understand behavior like seasonality, if that affects your business, product release and how successful those new items are, or maybe even dwindling customer interest. Keep in mind here that goals aren't retroactive, so you won't be able to get historic trending before the day that you first set them up. And the reverse goal path is really neat. This allows us to select a goal and see the previous steps involved by page visited. This is really helpful so that we can see the flow through the site and use this to check whether the pages you expect to assist with the conversions are or aren't. So for example, this is a great way to see if your calls to action are working. You want people to flow easily through a funnel. So let's say a page you expect to see in step 2 to conversions isn't. That page might need a better call to action link or button, better content, maybe a user experience update. On the other hand, if a page you wouldn't expect to contribute a lot to conversions is, that's a really high value page that we want to promote and we want to learn from. And you also want to look at the top conversions path report. Can
I ask a question really quick?
Yes.
Okay, how does Google Analytics track, or this might be a silly question, but how does Google Analytics track or know that that page is leading to a conversion? And also, like, to clarify, so conversion, could that be like anything from signing up for your email newsletter to like taking some other action? Like, how exactly does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. So the conversions are also known as goals in analytics. So the goals we set up manually. So we can have that goal be whatever we want it to be, like a newsletter sign up, like a purchase.
Okay.
And then Google starts tracking that goal behavior. And it knows what the previous step is because that's the previous page visited. So in this screenshot example, before they got to that order completed page, they were reviewing the order, and before that they were on a payment page. But you, for example, if you had the newsletter sign up, maybe they read a specific article before they signed up for the newsletter, and you can see, oh, that article got a lot of people to sign up. People must be interested in this topic. We should keep developing content around it.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Yeah. So this top conversions path, and we also talked a little bit this in the part 1 webinar, so sorry if it's a repeat for anyone, but it is really important, so I'm going to make sure we covered it again. So everywhere in analytics except for this section, Google uses what's called last click non-direct attribution, which means that whatever source other than direct traffic got you a conversion, a goal succeeded, it gets all of the credit. So for example, if I visited from organic search and then signed up for your newsletter, organic gets the credit. But let's think about like an old-fashioned water brigade where you're passing buckets to put out a house fire, right? You don't want to give the very last person to hand you that bucket all of the gratitude. Everyone involved in that line was really crucial. People don't often convert or spend money with you on their very first session. And this lets us see all the way back to 15 steps how different sources contributed to that final goal. For example, in AdWords, you might see that you got 150 purchases this month from paid campaigns. In the top conversions path, we can see that additional customers visited from a paid search and then left. And then they converted later on organic because now they know and trust your brand name because of that paid visit. So actually, the paid search campaigns are paying off in an even bigger way than we thought. And this way we can see our full customer journey and make better strategic decisions based off of it. And for our last section here, I wanted to talk about segments reports. These are great because aggregate data actually hides insights. But aggregate data is what we see when we just log into analytics and are just looking at all of those gigantic Excel sheets we've seen earlier in the presentation. Segments are data layers we can add in analytics, and they let us zoom in on crucial subsets of data. This way, for example, we can look at customers who convert versus those that don't, or visits by mobile only, or only logged in users, and that lets us hone in and concentrate. I have a link here to Google's official segment guide if you're curious to learn more about them. There are a bunch of preset segments and you can create your own. I have a whole list of the biggest ones for later. I promise I won't read all of them out loud to you right now. But just a few of the great ones are, for example, look at just visits from organic traffic. Look at users who converted versus who didn't, customers who came just from paid traffic. And that way, instead of looking at, let's say the behavior report, we were looking at how many people visited a page. Well, now we can look at just how many visited because of organic, which is otherwise in that acquisition sources channel report, right? Segments let us put all of that together. And how you add a segment, it's really simple. In fact, you've actually been using segments this entire time without even realizing it because by default, the all sessions segment is on. So to add one, all you go here is go to add segment. It'll give you a list of all of the pre-populated ones. You can just click the one you want or multiple if you would like to look at organic versus paid, for example, and hit apply. And don't worry here about any of your data. This isn't deleting or changing anything you have in analytics. It's just adding on an additional layer for us to better see reports. And I want to show you like a real world example of why this is useful. So let's say that I had some additional AdWords budget I was looking to spend. And I go into the geographic region that we saw earlier from the audience section. And at first glance, Texas is really outperforming Washington. That customer base is 20% larger. So maybe I decide, oh, I should target that state. But I want to take a step further. I'm going to apply a segment that compares all users to all users who made a purchase. So converters versus everyone. And now I can see that the Texas conversion rate was 5% and Washington had 10%. So by paying for the same amount of clicks, I can actually get twice as much revenue. This little extra reporting feature, and I've doubled my ROI. And segments are great because in this way, we can see and plan for really hyper-local and hyper-specific results. So really unlock your audience in a major way. Can you otherwise get this information out of analytics without using a segment? Yes. But you have to download several reports and put them together. It's time-consuming and frustrating. With the segment, all of it is right there for you in a really easy-to-use visual way. And that's, really our goal here, to focus that online performance in a meaningful way. This certainly wasn't everything that's in analytics, but these top reports and analysis strategies should provide the most important information to create that data-driven business culture that we're wanting out of our online marketing strategies. And I know we went through a lot of different reports. If it would be helpful to get a more specific walkthrough of what 5 to 10 factors should I grab out of analytics today to understand what performance is looking like for me right now. I have an email address here that we would love to have you contact so that we can send you over that marketing analysis report guide.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Anna. And thank you everyone again for attending today. So we're going to leave about 10 to 20 minutes for questions at the end, depending obviously on how many questions we get. So I encourage you, if you have a question or there's something that you want Anna to go back over and clarify a little bit, feel free to post that in the questions box in the lower right-hand side of your screen. I have a couple of questions here to get things started, and then we'll just take as much time as we need. So first of all, Anna, how often should people be looking at these analytics reports?
That's a really great question. So my instinct is at first to say every single day, but I realize that's not actually feasible for most people. What I think would be the best thing to do is take some time right now, if you haven't spent a lot of time, and go through each of these major reports we've talked about and just understand how am I doing right now, and then checking back in on a monthly basis. So at the beginning of the month, what happened in this last month, what happened in October. That way I know what should I expect for November, what worked in October, what should I do differently now moving forward, and that way we can inform the strategy.
Okay, so doing it on kind of a monthly basis is probably the best strategy then.
Yeah, at least for your top metrics. You know, I understand not everyone has time to look at 17 reports, but getting just a few numbers will help us.
Okay. Okay, so we have a question here that just came in. For businesses that don't have an online conversion option, like for example, a restaurant, what would you consider the most important analytics to look at?
Oh, that's a great question. So two answers. One, I would say even if you don't have a online conversion in the sense of an obvious purchase, there are still goals that we can use the website to track. Maybe you want to look at how many people visited your menu if it's a restaurant. Maybe you want to track how many people called to set up a reservation if you don't have online reservations. So there are still ways that we can think about what is the goal of the website that we want to make sure improves. But
okay, so it sounds like, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, but seeing that we can't do anything for conversions, if that's the case, then I would look at still the audience so you can see really locally who's showing up at your restaurant. Acquisition, so is my, like, let's say, Instagram program really paying off with all my pretty food pictures, or are people still mostly coming through organic search? And then behavior is helpful if you have a ton of pages, but I know a lot of restaurant websites, you basically just have the menu and then you have a contact us page. So if you don't have a plethora of content, I would say just focusing on audience and acquisition.
So it kind of sounds like the best strategy in most cases is to focus on what your goals are, or establish those goals. Like, what are you really asking of your customers? You know, what do you want? What kind of information do you want to know? And then sort of deciding what analytics features to follow according to that goal. Would you say that's an accurate statement?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. So another question would be, I guess I have one question actually. So for someone who's kind of new to all of this analytics reporting and everything, and maybe it's like their first month of creating a report from analytics that they want to look over, what are like the key features that you would be sure to include in the report? And obviously that depends on the company and, you know, what your industry is and all that kind of stuff, but what would you say are the key features to include?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are some that absolutely any business would need. So that would be just how much traffic are you getting? And how is that changing over time, year over year, month over month? Are you going up? Are you getting more? Or are you getting less? Hopefully not. How does that traffic break out by sources? So how much are you getting, again, from organic versus paid versus direct? It lets you know about your customer base and how the money you're spending on advertising is working. Looking at mobile versus desktop performance to make sure you're getting at least half of your customers from mobile, if not more. Right now, generally speaking, mobile use is 65% of our time online. But for some companies, they will have lower mobile naturally. If people are making, for example, major decisions, they're more likely to do that on their desktop than their phone still. And then also your the performance of your top, let's say, 5 to 10 pages. That way you can know how are these pages getting us traffic, and are people leaving where we don't want them to be leaving? Are they staying engaged with us?
Fantastic. So again, I want to encourage everybody to get engaged, ask questions. There's no such thing as a bad question. And another thing to consider as well, as we're kind of wrapping up the webinar today, is what kinds of topics do you want to learn more about? What do you want? What kind of content do you need help with? What kinds of topics confuse you? And I'd encourage you, if you have ideas for future webinars or suggestions, you can always email us at the email which is on the screen, info@marketingbitz.com, and we're happy to look over your suggestions. So before we wrap things up, I've got a few more questions. Okay, so so this is kind of a vague question, but what should I look at if my website traffic suddenly starts dropping drastically?
Dramatically, also just as bad.
Dramatically and drastically. Dramatically.
Yeah, oh gosh. Great question, because there's so many possible things that could be contributing to. So I think the first thing to start is just understand what specifically is dropping, and that way we can narrow in our research. So by default, if you're saying traffic's dropping, you probably mean just your total sessions. Let's first look and see, are they dropping by a specific source? So is organic going way down, and the others are maybe going down just a bit or fine. And then technology-wise, again, is mobile or desktop specifically going way down? And then for your audience targeting, is there a specific location that used to provide you lots of traffic that's gone way, way down? For example, if you used to get a ton of visitors from, let's say, Missouri, and now those customers have dried up, that's going to really cause your traffic to suffer, even if every other location you have is doing really well. And once you've isolated that one specific aspect, or even if lots of them are going down, the biggest contributor, you can hone in there and try to understand, okay, so why is this happening? So if we checked all of those and we found it's really organic search that's not doing well, then we can know, gosh, there's probably something going on with the SEO performance of my website that I need to understand. But on the other hand, the technology seems fine. We're getting the same type of customers that we used to. So now I know I can focus all of my time and effort here.
Okay, so I have an interesting question here as well. So are you familiar with Firebase, Anna?
Firebase?
Firebase. I think it's a Google development kind of thing. Does that sound familiar at all?
I'm afraid I'm not extremely familiar with it now.
Okay, no problem. That's totally fine, because actually the question was, do you have Firebase training, which is kind of why I was asking. So I will answer that question separately, but I just wanted to see if you were familiar with that that concept. So, okay, I'll answer that question separately then. So we have a couple more here. So can you maybe go over a little bit more in depth the idea of setting up goals on Google Analytics and maybe providing some suggestions there? We have a question on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fact, we had a section devoted to this in the first webinar, if that would at all be useful. Sorry for the self-plug. But within the goals section of Analytics, it's in that conversions tab that we talked about here, where you'll be able to see all of the data. To actually set them up, you'll have to go to the admin panel. And in there, there's lots of online how to set up goals resources. I'd be happy to get in touch with you personally and send you a link to a how-to guide if that would help. But when you're in there, you'll be able to choose what goal should I track as a conversion. And what that's going to be is definitely going to depend on the website. But I would start off by thinking, is there anything that absolutely provides me money in a sense of a direct conversion, or maybe they reserve something online, maybe they schedule an appointment, and that's going to be your macro conversion. So for example, I have a goal of how many people schedule service with me, because 9 times out of 10, that's going to turn into an in-person visit, and then we'll get that customer that way. This is a major source of revenue for me, and I need to make sure the website is performing like I want it to be. And then that's the revenue stream. We can then also focus on the lead nurturing stream. I see a lot of small business owners, they focus only on that absolute last point of sale goal, and that's really important, don't get me wrong. But if we only focus on that, we're not really thinking about that full customer journey and all the steps it took to build that customer's interest and loyalty before we got them to give us some money. So we can also think about what's contributing to that final goal, and what can we track then as its own separate micro conversion to understand how well it's doing. So in the example of sending in a request to schedule service, maybe that customer needs to read your FAQ page first. Maybe they need to look at your employees page and build some trust because that person is, say, coming to their home directly and they want to know who's going to show up. If you have an idea of what they're going to do before they convert, you can then track those specific page visits as its own goal, as you can blog reads, newsletter signups, demos, really any kind of interaction that you and the user are having together.
Fantastic. Thank you, Anna. And also, I just wanted to mention, I've been getting a couple of questions regarding the first part of this webinar. Some people missed it. And I think it's got a lot of information that would be really valuable to this group we have here. So I'm going to include a link to the recording of the first webinar in the email recap tomorrow, as well as a link to the recording of today's webinar. So you can review them both side by side, or just watch one or the other depending on what you really want to learn. So we have a few more questions, and then I'm going to let people go. So one question we have is there any case where, because you were mentioning how prevalent mobile, viewing people's websites on mobile is now and everything, and obviously almost everybody's got a smartphone, people are always on the go. So is there any case when you think a business's website might be more viewed on desktop than on mobile, or do you think that mobile is really the way to go?
Yeah, I think there are definitely a few very rare circumstances where you're going to have more desktop visitors. In fact, I know it seems like a silly example, but our own website for Go Local Interactive would count for that. People are visiting if they're interested in understanding if we're a trustworthy company to partner with, so they're probably at work because they've heard about us, so they're probably on their desktop, or they're thinking about coming to work for us, so they're, again, at their current job on their desktop, in which case our mobile use is going to be lower. Another example would be like very, very major purchase conditions. If, for example, I'm thinking I want to buy a new computer, I might look on my mobile phone just doing research earlier, but later when I'm way further down the point of sale funnel and I'm deciding, I probably want to have like 3 tabs open with 3 different computers to compare them. I probably want to do my purchase online because that's easier than entering my card number on my phone. And so in that case, again, you're going to see that larger influence of desktop. On the other hand, though, it is so prevalent, as you mentioned, like almost everyone has a smartphone, that what I would caution people to not do is think, I must be one of those companies and don't have to worry about it. Definitely be thinking hard about mobile performance if it's not what you think it is or should be, because again, that mobile first index could really come and hurt your site rankings and hurt your traffic if you're not prepared for it.
Okay, awesome. So we're going to move on to the last question. Again, unless anyone has any last minute thoughts, if you have any last minute thoughts or concerns or questions, I encourage you to post those in the question box now. But if not, last question we have is, so how far back in analytics should I go in time to look at trends?
Oh, that's a great question. So if you're first starting off, I would actually go back the full year. I know that's a lot to look at, but the danger of isolating ourselves to just a single month or just a single quarter is that there's so much impacting analytics. Things like, did you open up a new storefront? Did you release a new product line? Did you start advertising in new areas? Does seasonality affect your business? If we look at too narrow a window, we can either underestimate or overestimate what we're doing. If, though, we go back that full year and even apply it year over year, we're going to get a much better picture of how our company is doing. Just like if we're doing financials, it's important that we look at how that month came in specifically, but if we're thinking about profitability and revenue, we also need that year over year data too.
All right, fantastic. So with that, I think I'm going to close things up a little early today so everybody can get back to work. Yay! But before we do that, I would like to just make a couple of brief announcements. So if you have questions that you didn't have a chance to ask today, or you'd like me to connect you with today's speaker, feel free to email me at info@marketingbitz.com. And also, I'm going to mirror the statement I made earlier. We really want this audience to be involved, engaged. We want to give you the content that you want to know. So if you have suggestions for future webinar content or anything related to digital marketing at all, please feel free to send those our way as well by emailing us at the info email. And then, Anna, if you want to go back one slide, let's show that link or that email one more time. Yeah, so if you want to get this marketing analysis report guide from Anna, you can feel free to contact them at the contact@golocalinteractive.com email on the screen right now. Otherwise, you will be receiving a recording of this webinar tomorrow in your email, so keep an eye out for that. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to let us know. So thank you for listening, everybody, and have a great rest of your day.